All right, next question is from Anonymous, who says, how do we continue to manage this with our staff and let them know that they are safe? Or do we have to resign ourselves to the fact that we will ultimately get COVID?
There are several scientists and folks who study pandemics closely who have been talking about the way that pandemics spread. And actually, I think Dr. Hagen a couple of weeks ago talked about this too on our call in December. Yes, it's still December. But talked about the idea that over time, these variants become more contagious and less severe. And that's sort of the pattern of viruses in general. And there's some reasons behind that. Fundamentally, viruses are a form of life, and life forms generally are on Earth in order to propagate and continue life. And so if the virus is consistently killing its host, then it's not going to succeed in replicating. And so it's going to adapt until it reaches a level of contagiousness that allows it to grow at the pace that it wants to, and severity that allows it to not kill its host, people in this case. And so there's a school of thought with this, where we are in this moment in time, that essentially most people will get Omicron, and that may actually mark the transition from pandemic to endemic. And that essentially, because so many people would have gotten it, that we would then move into a world where most of us have achieved, well, most countries at least in the world have achieved herd immunity and are then relatively protected. Of course, there are questions even within that school of thought about whether there's a more contagious and more severe variant that could emerge. And the answer is yeah, right? As viruses replicate, they mutate. And as that happens, we always run the risk of a greater or different, at the very least, variant emerging. So that's one school of thought. Essentially, to answer your question, yes, in that school of thought, the idea is that we'd all get it. And hopefully that would mark a transition point in the pandemic where we moved forward and away from it. There's another school of thought that we still have the opportunity to contain and manage this virus, and that we still have an opportunity, even though it feels like a lot of people are getting it, to keep the people at least that are highest risk protected. I don't have the answer, and honestly, I don't think we as a society have the answer to that question. I think this is one we have to watch and see. But I can say, and would encourage you to reiterate from a staff confidence perspective, that both of those schools of thought exist. They both exist in the minds and words of credible and intelligent scientists and experts. Right? They can debate them, but neither are inherently wrong. And so, it's worth addressing that, naming that, and it's also worth talking about what we do on an individual basis to keep ourselves and our communities safe. And I know people are tired of hearing this. I can tell you, I'm tired of saying it. But batching and monitoring and reducing time and exposure are still the best things that we can do to keep our communities safe. And so that means keeping our groups as small as possible where possible and where practical. It means testing or at least health screening where possible. I've seen a lot of schools that have implemented a zero symptom policy. So if you have anything, a runny nose, a cough, anything else, you're not coming to campus. It means that. And it means getting vaccinated and getting boosted, so that, again, I now get to be a personal case study here. My experience with COVID was not a huge deal. It's certainly an inconvenience. It's certainly I don't recommend it, but it is not. It's not a life-altering moment. I haven't had to take a day off work, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I say that mindful of the fact that A, I'm really fortunate, and B, that there's a lot of privilege that's associated with that. I work from home, and so on. And so I don't want to be flippant about that. But I do want to name that from a health perspective, that my choice to get vaccinated, my choice to get boosted, et cetera, has put me in a position where I'm really safe. And I feel really grateful for that. And the science, the technologies that have been made available have allowed me to make that choice. And so also say I would encourage folks through live case studies like that from your own community, probably not mine, but from folks in your community who you can share, and if they're comfortable with, point to, and say, this is the benefit of getting vaccinated, this is the benefit of getting boosted, and so on. So I know that's not a very satisfying answer, and I think it's important to be as truthful with this as we can be, and that would be the best answer I can offer.